We're now going to consider the concept of cognitive archaeology. As you learned from our linguistic lectures, all languages are symbolic and all people think in language. However, symbols can change in meaning over time. Material culture can be truly symbolic, but how is it we interpret the symbolic nature of material culture, especially when we are studying objects from an ancient people who are no longer around to tell us what the symbols mean? Without the cultural knowledge of the ancient people, it becomes extremely difficult to interpret the symbolic meaning, the ideas of the people who created the material culture. Symbolic meaning, after all, is truly culturally specific. Cognitive archaeology attempts to address this issue. Cognitive archaeology is a theoretical perspective that focuses on the ways ancient societies thought and the symbolic structures that can be perceived in past material culture. Archaeologists in this school of thought often study the role ideology and different organizational structures and approaches had on ancient peoples. Archaeologists investigate and draw inferences about the roles these abstract ideas may have been manifested and internalized by ancient people by borrowing from other disciplines such as semiotics, psychology, and the neurosciences, to name but a few. It is good to remember that humans do not act on their senses alone, but by their lived experiences that include such things as their upbringing and various processes of enculturation and beliefs. And all this together creates a sort of mental map that guides them individually and collectively by those people who are living together. People who live together have a tendency to have a shared view of the world. Therefore, shared experiences and upbringing is believed to bring about a shared cognitive map that influences the group's material culture. Let us consider cave art, for example. Cave art may not have been art as we think of it today, but may have served for the people who created it a ritual function or merely had a symbolic function that represented the natural world they lived in. In other words, the cave art may simply be representing the natural things of the people found on a hunt or represent an animal that lives within the same ecological niche the humans live in who made the painting. In other words, the depictions do not represent anything beyond the obvious that can be determined from the world in which they lived. The symbolic background and the way the images or material culture were internalized by the people who created it would be ultimately different from the way we would use such symbols today. This creates a number of epistemological questions and issues. Because of this, Louis Binford, who I mentioned in the previous video, criticized cognitive archaeology by stating that it is only the people's actions in the past versus their thoughts that are preserved in the archaeological record. However, others, like Ian Hodder, have argued that these actions are still the product of human thinking that would have been governed by a multitude of experiences and beliefs. Cognitive archaeology ultimately is influenced by both the processual archaeologists and the post processualists. Therefore, the combination of material culture and actions they represent can be developed into the study of ideas that influence the behaviors of the people in making and using those objects.